In 1958, Aldous Huxley published a collection of essays called Brave New World Revisited. He was, of course, the author of Brave New World, and in this later work, he expressed deep alarm about global population growth. His logic was simple and at the time hard to refute. Modern medicine had advanced, and the death rates were falling fast. But ordinary people had little access to birth control, little genuine autonomy, and were actively encouraged by traditional religions to keep having children. The result was a population explosion. Huxley warned that this would draw the Earth's resources, destabilize society, and crush individual liberty, creating, in his view, the perfect conditions for totalitarian rule. He also raised a much more controversial point. On that sounds especially harsh today. He argued that the quality of human population was declining. In the past, Huxley said, any children born with even a minor genetic defect would struggle to survive. Nature was brutal, but thanks to better hygiene, modern medicine, and the growing sense of humanitarian compassion, most children with genetic problems now reached adulthood. What's more, they went on to have children of their own. Over time, this meant that genetic defects which nature would have to eliminate were now spreading through the human gene pool. From this observation, Huxley drew an even more direct and chilling conclusion. As human physical health declined, so would average intelligence, and the evidence, as he saw it, was already there. People he called biological low quality were reducing at much higher rates, while the educated elite were having few children or none at all. He laid out the number to show the scale of problem. When Jesus was born, the global population was about 250 million, but 1971, when he wrote Brave New World, it had reached near 2 billion. And by 1958, the year he wrote Brave New World Revisited, it stood at 2.8 billion. At the rate things were going, the world was aiding about 43 million people every year. That meant the planet signed a new United States every 4 years, and a new India every 8.5 years. In the past, it had took 1,600 years for the population to double, but by 1958, at that pace, it would take less than 50. Today, in 2026, the global population has reached about 8.3 billion. Growth has slowed significantly, but we are still aiding roughly 65 million people each year. In absolute terms, the scale is far larger than what Huxley worried about half a century ago. The global population has nearly tripled since he wrote those words, and some argue that the rise of nation-state made this explosion possible, because nation-state provided the infrastructure for industrialization, public health, and population management, which indirectly fueled rapid population growth. So has reality proved Huxley right? Are we suffering from too many people? Is overpopulation really the reason for weak global growth and high unemployment anywhere? The answer is more complicated than that. In some ways, Huxley does see part of the picture. When a country's population grows much faster than its industry and job markets, huge number of young people flood into the labor force, and society simply cannot create enough jobs. The youth unemployment crisis we see today in countries like India and Nigeria are directly connected to the rapid population growth. But look at the other side of the world, and you will see a completely different reality. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and Italy do not have a population explosion. They face the opposite problem: record low birth rates, severe aging, and a genuine shortage of workers. And yet, these countries are also trapped in long-term economy stagnation. That contrast hides a crucial clue: economy pain is not limited to crowded places. It also occurs where there are not enough people. Here is the strange truth: human society has never been richer than it is today. But at the same time, millions of young people cannot afford a home or find a stable job. Capital is heavily concentrated in many countries. Social mobility has all about friction. Some places has too few jobs, while others have too few workers. What we are really facing is a severe mismatch between population wealth and the rules that organize our economy. If we follow Huxley's logic a little further, the uncomfortable part of his argument, the part about declining human quality, is worth re-examining from a different angle. One thing he observed was true: highly educated, high-income people, especially women, have far fewer children. For them, having a child often means sacrificing a career. So this group tends to marry late, have few children, or none at all. At the bottom of society, the calculation is different. People with few opportunities to move up face a much lower cost when they have a child. And in many countries, welfare policies provide a basic safety net, which keeps birth rates high among low-income groups. But the problem is not that certain groups are born low quality. The real problem is class. Children born into poor families are not lacking good genes. They lost the race from a very concrete, material reason. Their families do not have the resources to provide high-quality early education. They cannot afford expensive tutoring. They lack the connections to get good internships. Many do not even have a quiet place at home to finish their homework. When these children grow up, they do not fail because they are dumb. They fail because they never had access to the family resources and the social capital that make success possible. So the trend Huxley worried about, that the most disadvantaged groups are doing most of reproducing, it's real, but it's not low IQ people spreading. It's resource-poor families spreading. Right now, on the internet and in expert forecasts, the general mood about global economy growth is fairly pessimistic. Many people believe that at least we got another industrial revolution. On that creates massive new resources and a new way to distribute wealth. The deadlock will not break. That's why so much hope is now pinned on AI and the latest wave of technological change. The optimists point to history. Over the last 2 centuries, people have repeatedly predicted that civilization was about to hit its limits. But each time, a technological revolution arrived just in time. In the 19th centuries, Malthus predicted mass famine. In the 1970s, the Club of Rome warned that the Earth would soon run out of resources and fell into permanent stagnation. But each time, something saved us: steam, electricity, the internal combustion engine, fertilizer, computers, the internet. These technologies did not just create incredible new wealth. More importantly, they create millions of new jobs for ordinary people. That is because past technological revolutions were about replacing human muscle. are acting as an amplifier for human thinking. With a little training, a farm worker could move to a factory worker could move to an office. But this time, AI is fundamentally different. It's not content with being a tool. It's starting to copy and replace human thinking itself. AI can write logical articles, translate language fluently, generate code, process complex legal documents, and analyze huge amounts of financial data. This used to be a core skill of the middle class, skills that took years of higher education to develop. And AI is now doing all of it at an incredible low cost. So, is AI creating new jobs? Yes, cautiously speaking, but compared to the massive number of jobs it's replacing, clerks, designers, junior programmers, financial analysts, the new jobs are very few. And here is the most telling signal, the most talked about policy solution for AI driven job loss in universal basic income, paying people not to work. The idea itself is a quiet admission of a brutal truth. The workers replaced by AI may never go back. At the same time, the rules of global wealth creation have shifted in a deep way. In the past, to get rich, you had to open a factory, hire workers, and produce things. That process alone created a huge number of jobs. But today, the most profitable industries are not longer the ones that employ millions of factory workers. They are financial derivatives, stock market speculation, and real estate. Capital move money around in these virtual markets, using leverage to make money grow faster. An internet company worth $100 billion may only need a few thousand engineers to run. A hedge fund making tens of billions a year may have a core team of fewer than 100 people. These new industries no longer absorb a huge number of ordinary workers that a car factory or steel mill once did. Instead, they act like giant pumps, sucking wealth out of the real economy, always from investments that could create jobs, improve people's lives, and strengthen communities. Put all of these layers together, and you will see the real situation for ordinary people. High-end industries, AI, semiconductors, robotics, biotech, are out of reach for most people. The cognitive and skill barriers are too high. You cannot simply work harder to get in. It takes years of quality education and social capital, starting from childhood. Mid-level, white-collar jobs, clerk, designer, translators, legal assistants, are being visibly replaced by AI. Competition is getting fiercer. Workers are more replaceable than ever. Wages are being pushed down. As for physical labor, that is relatively safe for now. But the pay is low, and there is almost no change to moving up the social ladder. The result is a trap. No matter how hard ordinary people try, it's almost impossible to escape the circle. Unemployment stays high, wage growth slow or falls. Meanwhile, rent, food, education, and healthcare keep getting more expensive. The situation eventually leads to a dead loop. Capitalism works, in theory, because of simple logic. Workers get paid. Then they become consumers. Their wages become spending power. They buy cars, house, bride, clothes. That spending turns into profit for businesses. Businesses take those profit and investment creates new jobs. But when ordinary people earn less and less, and employment keeps rising, spending power shrink, When spending shrinks, businesses cannot sell their products. When the business cannot sell, they have no reason to expand production or hire more people. When they do not hire, people's incomes fall even further. A billionaire can buy 10 houses, but he cannot replace a million middle-class families each buying one house. The real economy needs lots of ordinary people with money in their pockets to create total demand. When that huge group of consumers is systematically hollowed out, capital itself cannot find enough buyer for what it produces. Looking back, Huxley's worries from 1958 were both right and wrong. He correctly predicted that modern society would face enormous structural pressures. But he did not foresee that by the 21st century, humanity's biggest anxiety would not longer be too many people consuming too few resources. Humans have never had more material wealth or technological power than we do today. What really determines where